Wednesday, March 30th, 2022. And boy, this week's new black blonde Meghan is feisty. There was a topic today about AOC sort of floating the idea that the Democrats, and specifically the established Democrats, need to give up on the idea of the sort of old-fashioned way of deal making, and understand that they need to sort of pull themselves together if they want to survive the midterms. Um, and and she's very she's right about it. Um, and and she's been very careful about how she goes and floats ideas, specifically publicly through Twitter, and how she explains what she's trying to do and gives it context and gives it a rationale, and is very careful with her words. I think that she knows not to be flippant, um, and not to be antagonistic, and she also knows how to make sure that she keeps her words and her phrases very clear so that they can't be parsed out, so that the other side can take them out of context and parse out the little bits that they want and just say that she's an extremist, socialist out to ruin the country. I mean, they say that about her anyway, but she doesn't want to give them any fuel for that. And the point that she's making about the Democrats and the establishment Democrats is the correct one. That deals just aren't made, like they were 40 years ago between Republicans and Democrats. And you can't assume that the Republicans are going to negotiate in good faith, where they may bluster in one way publicly, but they'll cave privately and then clean up their own mess. They're not going to cave. They work like a block, and it's fairly impenetrable. And the answer to that, for the electorate, is to vote for more Democrats, but they can't seem to get that messaging out either. But new Meghan went on a tirade saying all sorts of stupid things, but hitting all the talking points. The first one being, the country isn't left of center. It's filled with moderates and independents. Well, yes, there's a lot of moderates and independents, but fuck you, lady. It actually, the electorate is actually in favor of the majority of the progressive policies that AOC is actually supporting. The electorate is looking for those things. Sonny listed them all out, and that's what we need to be focusing on. If you want to be able to get child care, if you want to be able to get lower prescription prices, if you want to be able to get a higher minimum wage, if you want to be able to get all of the things that were part of the Build Back Better plan but aren't the Build Back Better plan, then you need to be voting for more Democrats. That's the only way to get these kinds of things passed, because the Republicans aren't going to put them forward. They don't even have a fucking platform. And she goes on about all those things in the Build Back Better plan. How we didn't have a way to pay for it. Yes, we did. The whole thing is paid for. And the Republican, harping on we don't have a way to pay for it never comes up when they want to give tax breaks to the wealthy. Tax breaks, the Trump tax breaks, which by the way have still never been repealed. And it never, when it's one of their spending bills, is it a concern about how we're going to pay for it. And the biggest problem we have when we talk about the Democrats' messaging is a problem. It is a problem. Their unwillingness to play hardball is a problem. The messaging is a problem. But the biggest thing in messaging is that the Republicans make their arguments petty and mean. It's lazy. It's just lazy to argue that way. It says the guy who created a YouTube page that says Meghan McCain is the worst. I will say I'm not insulting about Meghan. I'm clearly just on her own words and her own behavior. I'm pointing out things where she may be incorrect, or a little hypocritical, or not quite as smart as she thinks she is. Anyway, um, the Republicans make things very easy to make fun of. And that's unfortunately what a lot of people will hold on to, even when they don't necessarily agree with the statement. But if they think it's funny and it is degrading, they're going to cling to it a little bit. And then that seeps into actually changing their opinions. And the Democrats don't do that. We don't make fun of the Republicans. And we don't make fun of their ideas, and we don't come up with silly little names for them. And I don't think the vast majority of the electorate wants that. I think they're so inundated by it, they can't help but get influenced by it. But we don't toot our own horn. And we don't, we don't use any of the tools to our own advantage. The message should be, if you want these things, vote for a Democrat. We don't put up a fight in areas where we could be winning. We don't support, a moderate candidate against a Trumpian. Nancy Pelosi and her position that she always supports the incumbent in the Democratic Party is not helpful, because the incumbent isn't always necessarily the best choice. And what people want, what the electorate wants, is things to get done. And that's the biggest problem, is that the Democrats seem to think that ideology and just saying the right words without getting the bill passed is enough. And I think Joy said it very clearly. The Democrats are willing to take their base for granted. And that is a giant problem, because yeah, I'm going to vote for the Democrat, most likely, because I know that voting third party doesn't help. So, it might as well just be voting for the other team, which again, the Republican Party doesn't want to help. So you try to do, put your votes where you think the most help is going to happen. And the problem is they don't deliver on the help that they campaign on, mostly because there aren't enough of them to get stuff done. You get sticklers like Manchin and Sinema, who at this slim majority are necessary to vote in a Democratic bloc, and they won't do it. So you need insurance senators that, so that we can have more than a split government. And that's the problem, is that they're not going to get that message out. And everybody keeps saying the Democrats are going to take a shellacking in the midterms. And the more that they say that, the more that it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. And, when someone says that Democrats are going to take a shellacking, the answer needs to be, not if more people go out and vote for the Democrats. And you need to be able to give people a reason to go to the polls. And it's hard to do when they continue to play a game as if it's 1985, or maybe as early as 1992 when Clinton won. But it's not a winning strategy, and they should be listening to AOC more, and they should be bringing her into leadership strategy. But they're an old fucking guard, and they're not letting go, and it's going to lose them their position of the little bit of power that they have, and it's going to be detrimental to the people of this country. So that's that.